Tonight is about LRT and it's not about LRT. So in the past we've talked about routes and the technical aspects of running an LRT train from Minneapolis out to Brooklyn Park. And we've been down that road, and there'll be a future open house on that again for an update. And a lot of the issues that have been raised before many have been resolved, and others are still being worked on. But tonight is the county-sponsored effort to help each of the cities plan for a future with LRT. So it's one thing to get the transit option, it's another thing to truly take advantage of it by having the stations be really special places. So the county's interests here have been to help cities plan their future. And this is really what this week has been about. This is the meeting tonight, culminates a long 4 days for Barry Long and his team from UDA, and Barry will be up here in a minute to go over all his work. So this is an opportunity. I told folks in Crystal, because we started the planning process in Crystal 2 nights ago, and that'll continue for another month. This is really the once in a 50-year, maybe 100-year opportunity that cities are going to have to really do some special things around, in this case, LRT stations. There are 5 in Brooklyn Park. You're going to hear about each of them. Throughout the week, Barry and his team have met with folks from, interested parties, including and not limited to the county folks, who of course we have interest in the roads and the library going up across the street. That is the library going up. I toured it today. They're thrilled with its progress. It's going to be open next year, so the quick update on that. With folks from the college, and the college, if you don't know, is having a master plan, and Dan is here from the college. Where's he? Yep, Dan, right? Yep. Okay. Tell me your position again, too. Vice President of Finance and Facilities. They're working on a master plan for this campus and some exciting things there. So obviously the rail line matters to them. Businesses, many businesses. Barry will talk a little bit more about the businesses around each of the stations and getting an idea of what they would want, what they hope for the future. Folks from the city staff, of course, city council members, and there was an open house last night. So all of those concepts for all 5 of the stations have been developed. You'll see some interesting drawings. But this is not the end of it. This is like a status based on a series of meetings for now, and after Barry's presentation, I think each of the tables are set up to ask you then to take another whack at it and see, what do you think looks good? What do you think maybe could be improved upon? What should we do more studying on? We still have some time before we put these things together, but that's the purpose of the evening. I think you're going to be surprised with what you see tonight. Earlier, UDA came into town. Their first engagement was in Robbinsdale to look at the Robbinsdale station, and after a very intense 2 days meeting with the entire city council, the mayor, everybody, the same as happened over these 3.5 days, some concepts emerged that even for people, I live in Robbinsdale, people who spent their whole lives in Robbinsdale, people were just reacted with great surprise and great hope for what really very cool things can be done there. So I think you'll see some of that tonight. I'm going to introduce Darlene Walser now. It's going to just give you a little bit of an idea of the process. Darlene is with the county's Community Works Department. She's done, and her team have done, a fantastic job with this. Thank you, Darlene, for all the work. It's been a long week, but we're at it with a lot of energy. So thanks again for coming. I'm going to hang around for a little bit, but once you start working, I'm going to leave you on your own. So if you have any questions, you can catch me for the next half hour or so. Otherwise, you can find me via the website, or I'm easily found. So fear not about that. So with that, Darlene.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Opat, and thank you everyone for coming tonight. What I'm going to do is just take a couple of minutes to walk through the plan for tonight. You each have an agenda in front of you. So you just heard a little bit about what's been going on this week. What we're going to do is show you some of those concepts, walk through it, and then we're going to turn it over to you guys to work at your tables and give that feedback to inform the design team. So as it goes forward, we can tell. We've listened to you in June 7th, at that June 17th meeting. We had a big community meeting over at the Community Activity Center. Based on that and all the input this week, we have some initial concepts. But as Commissioner Opat said, a lot of tonight is going to be about hearing from you. And then at the end, there's going to be a t-shirt giveaway. So those t-shirts that you saw coming in, someone from the city is going to, if you signed up, there's going to be a drawing for a t-shirt giveaway. We are here because the region decided that a light rail line is going to be, is planned for this northwest quadrant of the metropolitan area, shown in the blue line going up there. And there's a map on each of your tables that shows where that blue line goes up. It goes from the extension, the blue line that exists right now from the airport and Mall of America up to downtown would be extended from the Target Field Station out through Minneapolis, Golden Valley, Robbinsdale, Crystal, and Brooklyn Park. So, and the timeline, just to remind people, once again, we're still at the beginning of the process, both in the middle of the process, really, in terms of engineering. This is a brief timeline that shows what the engineering is doing with the line construction starting in 2018 and the line opening in 2021. So this is once again, the line with the far up on the left corner. I think a lot of you understand where that fits in the system. It sounds like a lot of you have been to a lot of these meetings. This is the picture of the line, which once again is on your table. And then this is the schedule that you may have seen from the project office before in terms of when the engineering will happen, the construction, and then the opening of the line. So once again, the planning that we're doing here is how do you prepare for that coming and making sure that each of these neighborhoods, each station is very unique, and each of the planning that we're doing with each city along the line is really a partnership with the communities to plan. So real quickly, a lot of you have heard this before, station area planning is a community-based process that looks at that 10-minute walk area around each station. Looks at oops, wrong thing. Looks at a couple of things. It's basically creating that long-term vision. What you're going to see tonight is some things that can happen short-term in the next 5 to 6 years when the line opens, but a lot of what you're going to see are things that could happen 15, 20, 25, 30 years out. It's really about how to make the most of the light rail investment, and there's also how it supports community health. There's 3 key things that we're looking at is one is connections. One of the things we heard a lot about from the community when we had the June 17th meeting is how do we make sure that pedestrians and bikes and cars and buses people can get to these stations. So how do we improve those connections as we look forward? Creating great places. And then also land use. What of the lands around the station, what do people want to preserve and make sure and build on those great things that currently exist? What are things over time that could change? So that's what we've been looking at this week. And once again, with community health, that's one thing that I know that the county is really committed to, and a lot of communities along the line. How we design our neighborhoods can really impact making it easier for people to live healthier lifestyles. So that's one thing that is also getting incorporated in as we do this process. So tonight you're here to get this, to hear an update on the station area plans. On Tuesday, October 20th, the project office is going to come and have more information about the engineering and the light rail line itself. And then, as I said before, based on your input tonight, the design team is going to go back and make revisions, and we're going to be back to present a revision of the plans that you're going to hear tonight on November 4th at the Community Activity Center. And that's from 6:30 to 8:30. So with that, I think this is a list of who, Commissioner Opat talked a little bit about some of the people who we met with this week. This is a list of just all of the people that we met with. And this was in addition, like I said, to the meeting that we had on June 17th over at the Community Activity Center. So that was the June 17th meeting. This is a summary of what we heard from the community at that meeting. All of this is going to be in a report that's going to come out when we complete this process in more detail. But basically, what people love about living in Brooklyn Park is it's convenient, the diversity of the population, parks and amenities, the quality of your services, the diversity and quality of housing, and then all of the colleges, libraries, education. Some of the things that people were concerned about was access to the stations, traffic and parking, making sure people currently living here have an opportunity to remain, economic and housing equity, safety and security, noise, parking, and neighborhood character. In terms of, we also asked the question, basically, what do you hope, how can the community benefit from LRT? What we heard was people are hoping that it can improve access to jobs and education, economic opportunities for both existing and new businesses in the community, a potential for increased property values. People are hoping that it will attract more visitors and workers to the community, and a better quality of life by improved housing, health, and reduced reliance on cars. And we also asked the question, so if the city was going to invest in key things, what would those things be? And the top things were improve access for cyclists, pedestrians, transit riders. Once again, I think what you're going to hear from Barry is one of the common themes we heard is as the line goes north-south through the neighborhood, how do we make sure we're connecting east-west throughout the community? The opportunity for redevelopment, both with retail, office, restaurants, and entertainment. Investment in outdoor spaces, parks and trails. Housing and jobs. Education and employment services. And then we heard a lot about more services for youth and opportunities for youth. So these are some of the meetings that have happened over the course of the last couple of months. And this is just a highlight of the feedback then we got at that June 17th meeting. What I just talked to you about, everyone talked about in Brooklyn Park in general. Since there are 5 stations, some of the feedback we got from the community and the community working group early on was we can't look at each station individually in Brooklyn Park. We really need to look at it, how it fits into the overall city and how the whole overall corridor works. So with just 63rd, the kind of highlight from there was preserve and provide affordable and diverse housing that exists. There's a lot of housing, it's very stable housing that exists around there today. How can we get some commercial activity near the station and better connections? For Brooklyn Boulevard, there was a theme about access to healthy foods and jobs, education and training. A mix of uses, that was a big one that came up of how around some of these stations do you have a mix of uses that serve a broad range of people. And then signage and wayfinding as people come into the station. 85th, we heard, it's a great neighborhood, how do we preserve that neighborhood? But then also, how do we take advantage of community opportunities with the library there and the North Hennepin Community College expansion? 93rd, it was really about, that's a job center and how do we create better walking and biking connections? And then Oak Grove, that's really about, what we heard was how do we make that a destination, that Main Street in the community with a Main Street feel, and also that same access. So once again, all of that is what we had heard from June and throughout the week, and based on that, I'm going to turn it over to Barry Long now, who's going to show you some of the designs, the concepts then that the design team came up with based on what you all told us about your community and what you'd like to see.
Well, good evening, and thank you, Darlene and Commissioner Opat. We were very excited to be here this week. Again, my name is Barry Long, and I'm a managing principal with Urban Design Associates. I'm an architect by training, but we do master planning for cities as our way of life all over the country, and we also work internationally. We're not a huge firm, and your community is not unfamiliar to us in its scale and its density and the way that it's growing and the diversity of the resident population, but it is unique. And we recognize that every community is unique, and you can't bring cookie cutter solutions to a place like Brooklyn Park and expect it to work. You really have to get down on the ground, meet with the citizens, the elected officials, the people that live here to learn about your community so that we can make recommendations with you for a contextual response for each station location. Not surprisingly, we learned an awful lot this week that we didn't know, being from out of town. In our touring of your community, eating in your restaurants, walking where there were sidewalks, finding gaps where there weren't, and understanding, working in City Hall all week, just a little bit about your community, but we're still new here. And the way we learn is we have everybody put all their good ideas out on the table, we say, and we pick for the best ones. Before I get started, we have a couple of people or organizations we'd like to thank. The City of Brooklyn Park, wonderful hosts over in City Hall. You have a terrific City Hall. I think we probably do know maybe more about the back of house of City Hall than a lot of you do. It's very nice. It's not they aren't gilding the lily, but they've been very accommodating and really helped us get a lot of work done this week. We'd also like to thank Hennepin County, our client, who has brought us in to do stationary planning on behalf of the city of Brooklyn Park. And we're also working for Crystal in a workshop next month, and as Commissioner Opat said, for Robbinsdale a couple of months ago. And we'd like to thank, too, the project office. They've been a terrific help. They're doing the LRT design. That's not our specialty. I'm not an engineer. We are not engineers. We are trained as architects, so we're working on the land planning of the areas around the stations. So what we'll talk about tonight, just for orientation, is a little bit about how the LRT is planned, but that's not our job. That falls to others, and they have a very talented team of engineers that's been working on this for a long time. And I'd also like to thank our team from UDA, Megan and Isabel and Erica, who have, back there at the table in the corner. They've worked awfully hard since Monday to put together everything that you're going to see tonight. Our office is packed up in a suitcase and ready to go at a moment's notice, but we typically work in the communities that we are working in, because when you need to go out and check something or understand conditions, it's just a whole lot easier to get immediate feedback than to try to figure it out from a distance. You just can't know someplace unless you get down on the ground. And also David Shaunt, our illustrator, who did the drawings that are on the wall here, and you'll see them in the show this week. My partner, too. David's back cleaning up the workshop room. We wear many hats, so we appreciate David staying behind to do that. And also all the stakeholders that came out. We had a list of who we met with. There were many, many meetings. City Council, the council members gave us their time to be briefed in notice meetings. We really appreciate that. We met with the Planning Commission last night. So we met with a lot of folks this week. We definitely know enough to be dangerous. So tonight is a first presentation. We're going to listen to you, your feedback tonight, and we'll be back in about a month with another presentation. And we won't have a draft of a report for recommendations for the area around the stations until January. So this is really, for us, early in the process. And please appreciate that when you see the images if we've done something wrong. It was because we were working in a big hurry, but the next step will be refinement. So one of the things we did, not only in reading all the meeting minutes from the SWOT analysis that were done in the previous meetings that have been held, and touring your community, we also looked at the way that it laid out. We do what we call x-rays, which are like a doctor, and we'll look at one land use at a time. So in this image that's up on the screen, we were looking at the pattern of housing settlement, for example. And Brooklyn Park is primarily, the primary land use is residential. A lot of the white area is undeveloped. And there are other land uses, but the predominant one is residential, and that's important here because we're not replanning your residential, and we want to be clear about that. You have stable, healthy neighborhoods. You have a broad mix of housing types. And station area planning is not about going into residential neighborhoods and recasting those for the future, absolutely. It's also interesting to us, though, that a lot of the residential is on the eastern side of where the light rail line is planned. That's important because folks that are walking or biking or driving to a station, if they choose to use light rail, and not everybody will, but a lot of folks will, we know from our experience, will come from the east. On the west, there's other types of uses, and we're going to talk about that. And we do need to remember that the light rail line as planned runs up West Broadway. West Broadway is a main street, but it also is on the eastern side of your city. And it is very close to Highway 81, Bottineau Boulevard there, and other interstate connections, which is part of the reason that some of the land uses there that we're going to talk about that are not residential are so healthy. They're there for a reason, and we don't think they're going to be changing anytime soon. There's an ongoing city pedestrian and bike study by Community Design Group that is a concurrent study, and we're going to use that information in our report. We're not going to recreate the wheel on that. There's a draft, which we'll talk about in just a minute, that you can take a look at. Also, Nelson Nygaard is doing stationary 10-minute bike shed study. What that means is they're doing a study where you can ride from a station, which many folks are likely to do, who do choose to ride light rail on a recurring basis, on a regular basis, are likely to ride 10 minutes. They're less likely to ride more than that. So the 10-minute study is how you get on a bike and ride. It's not as the crow flies. And then S.B. Friedman is doing a market study, and this is very important. We do not like doing hypothetical or pie-in-the-sky planning. Our practice really relies on market studies to project what the available types of land uses will be in the future. So we don't come in and create crazy plans that scare everybody, and hopefully we won't scare everybody tonight because that's not our intent. But by doing things hypothetically and then asking a market consultant, what do you think? Our process is to get a market study done. And the gentleman, Jeff, who was in charge of that, was here with us this week. That work is also ongoing, so we have preliminary recommendations, and then we've gone and allocated that to the various stations. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, too. So there are these 3 concurrent studies. So the pedestrian and bike study, I don't want to spend too much time on this other than to tell you this is out in the 30-day comment period. And the website is up there, brooklynparkpedbikeplan.org. And you can make comments on the draft if you would like to. There's a lot of very good information in there. We'll be waiting until we get the final study before we incorporate that into our report, and they'll be done, I believe, for the most part by the end of October, but everything will definitely be finalized by the end of the year. And as it goes to the market, I can give you a brief summary of opportunities, which is there's probably more demand for a variety of different types of uses in Brooklyn Park than you have available land. And depending on your perspective, that's a good thing. Change is always difficult, and you still have undeveloped land that is being developed, and different folks land on different sides of that issue. But there are limited available sites. Besides at Oak Grove, and even at Oak Grove, it looks like a lot of land today. It's not going to look like a lot of land in 20 years. But there's limited sites for major new development and redevelopment in the near term. There's pent-up demand for multifamily housing, market rate multifamily housing. There's pent-up demand for a variety of types of housing. It's not just one type, like say for families. Seniors, there's a tremendous amount of demand for seniors. Greenfield development is less expensive in your community than redevelopment. And this is very important to understand. It's much easier to develop on a site right now in your community that does not have a building on it than it is to purchase something, take it down, and build something else. You see a little of that going on here, but in general, a lot of the development that's still going on in Brooklyn Park, because you are a suburban community that has available land, is on new sites. And that is going to continue because those sites are easier and less expensive. And then public support will be needed to accelerate some redevelopment that will serve community needs if you decide that that's something that you want. That's completely up to the city of Brooklyn Park. But a lot of redevelopment, especially of existing sites, we'll talk about this, is not going to happen without changes in policy. There's just not a lot of incentive for it to happen today. So that's a choice. That's not a dictated outcome from the building of light rail. So a little bit about the vision for the corridor. Again, the area that we're studying is within a half-a-mile radius of each station. That bike study is getting out up to 3 miles in some cases, because that's 10 minutes for biking. But we're looking at more of a 10-minute walk shed. And the 5 stations, as you can see them here from north to south, and we're going to talk about them in order, are 63rd Avenue, which is on the southern side of 94, which is a major cut through your community. Brooklyn Boulevard, 85th Avenue, 93rd Avenue, and Oak Grove. And the first time we had an opportunity to drive that corridor, we realized right away that the predominant land use, even without looking at a map, was different at each station. And light rail does not mean that the same uses are going to go to each station. What light rail does is it, in the best scenario, enhances the use that's already there in each case, and that's what station area planning is about. So at 63rd Avenue, the predominant use down there is residential. That is a residential neighborhood. There's very little commercial. There is a transit garage facility which will be much better utilized when there's a light rail stop there. At Brooklyn Boulevard, the predominant use is retail. It's a commercial center. It's right now by the amount of square footage, the main commercial center for your community, and it has a tremendous variety of uses. The next one, 85th Avenue, the predominant land use is institutional. It's actually this facility right here, North Hennepin County Community College, is the predominant land use around that, but around the community college, as we all know, is residential. At 93rd Avenue, that's primarily an employment center. As you look down to the south east in the bottom corner, it's housing coming up to that intersection. But on the other three sides, they're employment uses, and most of those are already there today. And then finally, at Oak Grove, there's one property owner there, which is Target Corporation, and their plan for that site is mixed use, but the predominant use there will be corporate office campus type uses, which will focus on employment. So the only point we want to make is that each station is different, and nothing that we were told this week said that all those stations should be the same, that they should encourage the same type of development, or that there should be development at all the stations. That's a choice, not a dictated outcome. So we've colored them with dots, and actually we had a community meeting in Crystal this week. The uses around that station are very different. We know Robbinsdale has more Main Street oriented uses. So one of the interesting things around this line is that each of the stations is different, and variety is the spice of life. So the differentiation is one of the things that we're really interested in. But what's going to be different tomorrow than today, or 6 years out when light rail comes, is that today we have auto-oriented arterials that run through the main part of your community. And in the future, the autos are going to share the right-of-way with other modes of transportation. So we're going from an auto-oriented arterial to a multimodal Main Street, in a sense, where autos are going to be complemented, in addition to the buses that are there today, by light rail, pedestrian movement through better pedestrian connections, and bikes. The city has a Parks and Open Space, or Recreation and Parks master plan, which already anticipates creating trail connections or completing trail connections through your community. The Rush Creek Regional Trail at the top of your community is a major amenity, and the Crystal Lake Trail, which is built to the 63rd, just past the 63rd Avenue Transit Garage today, is a major amenity, and that's going to actually connect along the LRT right away all the way up to Rush Creek. And then we also have the Mississippi River Trail as another main trail. But there's a whole other trail network that your policy documents are already working on completing, and we think that this is something that should definitely be supported. It'll probably take another 20 years, but it is a good long-term project for the community. On policy, though, one of the things that we think you should also consider is, as the county roads are rebuilt, and they are being widened and rebuilt, and the 4-lane divided roads along those roads, we would recommend a 10-foot multi-use path rather than a 5-foot sidewalk continuously along all of those. It's already proposed along West Broadway all the way up into the Oak Grove transit stop. And it will connect all the way up to the Rush Creek Trail. But we would also recommend on these red lines that that same pattern be taken east and west. And the county road folks are thinking about that, but we think That will provide more direct connections between the more organic trail network. And at the vision scale, we think that's very important. So now we're going to talk about the stations, and we're going to go south first and work our way north. So we're going to start at 63rd Avenue. 63rd Avenue is not on West Broadway. It's on Bottineau Boulevard, and that's Big Street. We dimensioned it, actually, and the width from the right-hand side of this image over to the left from the Crystal Lake Trail to the other side of the heavy rail track right-of-way is 260 feet. It's just about the length of a football field, which is impressive. And you have to cross numerous lanes of traffic to get there. So in the focus groups we had, pedestrian safety and circulation is a main concern. On the north side of this intersection, there's an island where a number of people we met with have been stranded before. They didn't make it across all the lanes of traffic before the light turned. And there's no protection there. And there's also no button. So you have to wait until you can go again. Until you get the light to cross the other 5 lanes. To get to the pork chop island, to get across a right-hand turn lane, then the LRT tracks and the heavy rail. So it's like American Ninja Warrior out there, really, if you like that show, really. It could be. This could be a competition site. But so how PEDs get across is really, really important there, and we paid a lot of attention to that. So the way this area is today, from a stationary planning or redevelopment standpoint, directly adjacent to the station, you have a lot of residential development, and it doesn't really lend itself, we don't believe, to redevelopment, and we would not recommend that. There is a site that's vacant from the rebuilding of 81 that was a commercial site and could be again. And there's a vacant parking lot back behind the transit garage, which also may lend itself to some uses. But the uses down here are going to be, or the redevelopment or the initiative, it's going to be like acupuncture. It's going to be very targeted. So from a light rail standpoint, the plan is to keep that garage, which is there today, and this is a plan of this. The light rail will be on the other side of the heavy rail track, so there will be a bridge that goes over it, glass enclosed bridge from the existing stair structure that will get you down to the platform. And you can also enter the platform from the south from a sidewalk to walk right up and in. The light rail station, the platform will be in the middle, and the trains will stage on either side, and that's typical for all these stations. And this is just a section. These are the project offices drawings to kind of illustrate how that bridge would work, and you'd come down. And then you can see some of the traffic lanes, although they're kind of at the middle of the road, not at the intersection, and how heavy rail will work. Heavy rail will run adjacent to the light rail. So one of the things we did, and you'll see this with each of the stations, as we asked ourselves in the city, what are the opportunity sites? And here are the sites that were identified. We break it into short-term, 5 to 15 years, and then long-term is 15 to 25 years or more. And short-term here, there are opportunities behind that parking garage on Metro's parking lot site, we believe, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then on this triangle-shaped site, which is wrapped by roads, but was cleared with the reconstruction of the highway. There's an opportunity for some development on vacant land there. The longer-term redevelopment, we talked to the owners of some commercial properties that are just below the triangle, and they said with the reconstruction of the highway and the adding of 2 lanes, it's tough for commercial there to get in and out, and they would probably be better located in another place. So that is a potential long-term change of use. We also have noted that to the east of the site, this is not a redevelopment opportunity, but there's some very deep lots, and it might be possible to do a zoning overlay to allow the owners there to have more flexibility in what they do. Again, that's a policy issue, and that's really up to you, but it's in proximity to the transit, and the lots are extremely, unusually deep there compared to what's around them. So that's just an item of discussion. We haven't drawn anything for those sites. And then there's an apartment complex which is fine today, but in another 20 to 25 years, we believe is going to be a site which will need potentially to be renovated or redone. And from a market standpoint, you can see here developing the vacant land, the notes, the county-owned land into retail space for local independent business is what we're thinking of on the Triangle site. A pop-up market behind the transit garage, and then a pedestrian bridge across County Road 81, which we're going to look at in a minute. So this is a little station area plan. And again, those things we just mentioned, the marketplace back behind the garage for an ethnic market, seasonal ethnic market, a couple of days a week. We heard that that might be a good idea, and we'd like to talk to you about it. The buses are going to stage out on the street. They're not going to go back there and loop around every day. A bus will go back there periodically, once in a while, but not every day. And so there's an opportunity to have a discussion with Metro about that, and that will be a discussion. And the little commercial site, which is in the foreseeable future, does have room for parking behind and a little commercial building at the 100% corner if that site's redeveloped. One bigger idea which came up was whether or not well, how are we going to get across that very wide street? And I think that's a legitimate question. So going up and over, we did look at that. And I'm not a big fan personally of pedestrian bridges because oftentimes, or bike bridges, because oftentimes you have to go to the intersection and it's like a switchback. You have to go way back and come back. But this is a unique condition here, and you actually have very long areas on both sides, on the north side, to run up to the bridge, almost 500 feet. So you actually don't need those big switchbacks. You could actually, as you're going down the street, come up, get up high enough to go over a house, which is what, actually 81, you have to be able to get a house down 81. Again, it's good to be here because I never would have guessed. And then you got to get over heavy rail. Heavy rail has a very heavy, high height requirement, and then you come back down. So if something has three decent arguments, we would put it on the table to talk about. And we think that there's three good arguments for that. So the first is that it would provide those who might otherwise be stuck in the island an opportunity to go up and over on a pedestrian bridge. And it would connect folks on the east to transit and on the west to the rest of the city. And especially, the elderly and children, but, the rest of us may also choose that route. We would not take out the at-grade crossings, but we would say that there is a user group that we could argue would use it. It also connects the regional trail to the light rail, which is interesting because the Crystal Lake Regional Trail would come right, and does today, kind of comes back around that road today. It doesn't go straight. It goes right to the bottom of where that bridge would be. It would connect over to the light rail. And then the third thing for your city is it gives you a gateway opportunity to say, welcome to Brooklyn Park. It doesn't, I might have missed the sign. I've only driven that a couple of times, but I did not see the sign, welcome to Brooklyn Park, this is Brooklyn Park. It's a gateway, but it's not a very well marked gateway. And the bridge would give you an opportunity to look at that. Just for discussion. And I would also say technically, I'm not an engineer, we're not engineers, and no one has gone out and proven that that will work. But we think it's something that is open for discussion, and we would encourage you to let us know what you think. And then this is just zoomed in on a detailed plan that shows the proposal for the local ethnic marketplace back behind the garage and the retail center in the red down on the Triangle site within the near term. We set up to 15 years. One of the things we learned about this area too, about the bridge, is that approximately 20% of the residents in that area do not own cars. So it is a high percentage of folks who are walking down there, and that bridge would really benefit them. But it also supports these other local retail uses, and there is not any other retail at that intersection. It was needed to be removed with the reconstruction of 81, and it's no longer there. So the first of the images up on the wall actually goes back behind the transit parking garage in the paved area that's there today. And it looks at what you could do for virtually no investment to create a pop-up marketplace, seasonal pop-up marketplace there using that area behind the light rail. This is a very popular use in the region. There are many marketplaces, but there actually is not one in close proximity to this area that we're aware of. And it has an advantage in that not only does that bridge connect you to light rail, but the bridge from light rail would connect you back to the marketplace. So again, something for you to think about and discuss. Moving along, the next station is Brooklyn Boulevard. Predominant land use is retail at that station today. And there are very few vacancies. And we know that the vacancies that there are today are going to be filled up with new uses. We met with the retailer where the two large uses around the corner from Cub, their leases were up and they moved to another location, but they have new uses to go in there. And this is a very healthy retail node. I think the city refers to it as a node or a commercial node, and a very important one. And just about everybody we met with, I think everybody we met with shops here on a regular basis, whether it's CVS or the grocery or Target or whatever. So the way the light rail is going to work here is proposed to work. It'll stop right next to the Acura dealership on the south side. Again, it'll be a center platform, so you'll get off on the center. The trains will be on either side. And then pedestrians can cross either at Brooklyn Boulevard at the top, or they can come down and cross at the light that's there today, one street down. But it's a very simple proposal, and then the light rail will continue on with the light heading north. And at this location, there also will be buses. And they will be down at the lower light by the bottom of the Acura dealership, and as you go across the street to McDonald's. That's where the bus stations will be, but they're going to stage out on the street. Most of them will. Now, there's a transit loop that will remain that's backed by Cub Foods, but out here on the street, this is the project office's designed for the station, so the bus shelter. So it'll sit right next to the bus pickup area, right on West Broadway. And then behind it, there'll be a 10-foot multi-use trail that runs all the way up and down the line on both sides. And you can see they've illustrated both the cyclists and pedestrians there. So folks are shocked, actually, and I guess we were a little surprised too, that there are very few opportunities at this area. And I would say that we would even be pushing the envelope on saying that any long-term opportunities are actually even in anybody's thought process today. In the short term, there's some vacant sites. There's a site out here across from the community college next to the church, and I think the church actually owns that, that's still vacant. It's an opportunity site. And then where the light rail comes over, right down below Target, there's an area down in there where there's a vacant parcel today that's for lease and a vacant store, and there's a little city site behind the Acura dealership. And that's it. And in talking to the landlords in the short term, they don't foresee redevelopment. So what we have is just like in other places, it's the vacant land or the vacancies that are the opportunities. And it's worth kind of explaining why we're not going to see a lot of redevelopment here unless something changes. Many of us have borrowed money for a mortgage before or for other things. These properties have been here for over 30 years, and most of these owners don't have mortgages anymore. They own these properties. And what that means is they can be much more flexible with the tenants that they have. They can have more small businesses. The rents are very diverse. And that actually makes for a great shopping environment down there. And the owners are very happy with the mix that they have. And there's more tenants that want to go in here than there is available space. That's just the truth about this area. So the owners are not real excited about redevelopment. Everything's working just fine for them. The businesses that are down there are happy with the traffic. Everybody's excited about light rail because it adds more traffic. So in the short term, we don't see a lot of redevelopment. In the longer term, though, evolution is inevitable. We know that, and retail is changing very quickly. And store types, some that can't compete with the internet anymore, are changing over. What we do think you are going to see down here over time is more restaurants. Some folks have told us that Applebee's down there is our only sit-down restaurant, although, we have. We're getting a few more, but more restaurants is something that folks would really like to see, especially more diversity in the restaurants, someplace where you could sit down, and a more even broader restaurant mix. There is some food and beverage, quite a bit down there today, but there could be more. One opportunity that does exist on day one is to really make a statement at the intersection of West Broadway and Brooklyn Boulevard. Right-of-way is being acquired for the light rail to come through, which creates large triangles at each corner. Today, it's just open space. And there's going to be that 10-foot path, which we've illustrated in purple here, running both north-south and east-west across this intersection. But there's additional land to really make a statement there, to brand this as the commercial center or key commercial center in Brooklyn Park. And that could be, if you want to think of it like Brooklyn Station, where, or a brand like that, where all the retail is identified together at the corner, and you say, hey, this is not just a series of different uses. We're going to create a landscape and a signage and small plaza statement at each corner that says this is something special. This is our commercial place, and when you're there, you know you're there. And we think getting off of the light rail or coming through there as on a bike or as a pet or in a car, that would be helpful from a wayfinding standpoint. But going back to the bigger picture, we have not done any master plan drawings over any properties here because we didn't find one owner who said they would be interested in a redevelopment, but for unforeseen changes in market forces in the next 20 years. And I would give you CVS as an example. That use is about 4 years old. That's a 20-year or more lease. That's a great anchor for that center, and the owners there are very happy. And but if things were to change, so this brings up a key point for the city. If you want to have things change there, it would have to be a change of policy that would drive it. Either that area would have to be zoned more flexibly, potentially to encourage things to happen. We're not sure even if you did that in the next 15 years, things would change there. Or there has to be public investment to make that work. If you would like to see a different kind of development there, those are the kind of things that would be required. And I think that coming in there was sort of an expectation that what a lot of us associate with transit-oriented development, that would be a place that would happen because there's so many great commercial uses there. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you could have mixed-use development where you could live there if you were a senior, go to the drugstore, go to the grocery store, be able to take light rail to the community college or downtown. Your whole world is within easy reach, and maybe you don't have a yard to take care of anymore. But this transit-oriented development prototype, and I think some folks here have anxiety of having seen this done in other places about whether or not it would work here, probably won't happen here without policy and incentives. So it is a decision that the city and its citizens can make about its future. This is a very strong commercial center, much stronger than we thought, and it's going to remain that way for the foreseeable future. Okay, accelerating up the line to 85th Avenue. Again, that's the stop that's here at the community college. They have expansion plans, which they shared with us this week and presented to the members of the council members at a public meeting on Monday night. They rolled out some visions for the growth of their institution. The way the light rail is going to work here is it's going to, again, be staging on the south, right over here between the campus and the retail center across the street. It's, again, a center platform. It'll have two ways to get off, up on 85th or down below. However, the light is going to be moved further down south. It's there today. The cross-section will be 2 lanes north and 2 lanes south, again with a light rail in the middle. There'll be a street tree on either side, 8-foot tree buffer, and that'll run all the way up the boulevard through all the stations, and then the 10-foot path on either side, multi-use path. The opportunity sites here, again, are largely a vacant land. In the short term, 5 to 15 years, which is the plan that the Community College presented, is for new civic plaza space in front of the new library, the beautiful new county library that's being built across the street. It was always hoped that there would be a civic space right below that, and part of the plan is to make that vision come true. The Community College also owns in the longer term another parcel which is illustrated in light blue over to the east. And then we talked with the owners of the shopping center, and in the longer term, they're taking a wait-and-see attitude with light rail to see how it affects their center. But that may be a potential redevelopment site in the next 15 to 25 years, maybe sooner, but we put it in the longer-term category because there's uncertainty around that. So the station area plan here in dark purple illustrates the community college's proposed expansion, which includes a new administration building out on the corner, which will actually orient out to the intersection rather than focusing inwardly the way it does today. And then on the north side of 85th, we can see in dark purple the library, which is currently under construction. And then the vision is for performing arts use and a performing arts center and arts-related uses on the north side of the street. And we have a little detailed plan of that here. So the concept would be to create a civic plaza at the corner with a enclosed pavilion building, which is a small building just below that, and that would provide visibility and access to the library when you're coming north as a pedestrian or on your bike or from the light rail. Then next to it, we've illustrated a performing arts building, and then the academic building is the L-shaped building on the other side of the quadrangle there, and a small parking garage which may be needed. We did meet with the library representatives. They said maintaining some surface parking for them is very important, and we've put that back in the plan. That was not in Monday night's plan that was presented, but we've added that back in. And then on the in the orange on either side, we've showed complementary uses. That could be mixed use. It could be staff and faculty housing. It's probably more challenging here to do any kind of retail in the future. It's never been a retail hub, and it's definitely an institutional hub now, but a small amount of ground floor retail might work here. And then this is an illustration of what that might look like. And I should say before we get ourselves in trouble, we're always getting ourselves in trouble, you know, the day after, but the light rail platform itself, there's not a design for how the canopy and all that would work. So this is our artist representation of that. I don't want to get a call from the project office tomorrow saying, what were you thinking? But if you like that, you can let us know that too. We're happy to. So you can see the new gateway, the plaza, to enter the new or proposed academic building here at the community college, and then looking north, you can see the little pavilion building, the iconic pavilion building, and the civic plaza, and then the new library, and the performing arts building. This is a wonderful institution, and with the addition of the library and arts uses, it would just become an enhanced cultural center. And we think a great amenity for the community. Down at the bottom, we're actually looking in over that other building. We would suggest that the other corner be reoriented in the future just to put the parking behind, and at the three corners create more of a civic plaza space so that you get a little bit of relief at the three intersections. 93rd Avenue, the Employment and Neighborhood Center, but this is the job stop. Today, there's about 1,700 jobs there, very diverse. The light rail station, again, will stop to the south of that intersection. The opportunity sites there are all in the 5 to 15 year range. And there are already plans for the majority of this space, although the owners may want to think about light rail in their development plans. So this is going to continue to be an employment hub. In the next 20 to 25 years, from a redevelopment standpoint, we may see more office uses coming in here because office and office warehouse are very similar uses. So in the future, most of this stationary plan just reflects the current proposed build-out and shows the locations of the proposed buildings as they currently stand. And before I leave this, the main improvement that's needed here is pedestrian access, and 93rd will be rebuilt with a 10-foot trail on either side. And we need, they're asking for mid-block pedestrian access behind the car wash too. That's a 2,000-foot-long block, and there are a lot of pedestrians that are wandering through there today to get to work. And then finally is the Oak Grove Mixed-Use Center. And again, Target has already built their first phase there. So this is envisioned as a multi-use center, and the proposal for light rail here is you would come up over the 610 bridge and that goes over 610, and then light rail actually peels off and goes to the left. And the station will be on the second block up. There'll be a garage there, an intermodal free garage to park and ride. There'll be a station on that side, and then we have a very large boulevard in the middle as part of the proposal. And this is just a detail again of the station area, so there'll be a park and ride station at this location. The concept here, though, is to do a very wide median, in part to help hide the utility poles that run up there today, so we could put large trees on either side, but it also gives us the advantage that we can treat some of the new stormwater runoff and create a beautiful termination to West Broadway in Brooklyn Park. All of this 310 acres that hasn't been developed is really within the 5 to 15 or maybe 20-year plan. It'll be a mix of attached housing, which would be apartments and condos, corporate office, hotels, and dining and convenience retail, and that's what our market study says. But it would be heavily weighted towards corporate office. So the plan for this area has, in the dark blue at the top, Target's northern campus. And again, the buildings that are shown there are there today. Below that is their mixed-use Main Street. They would like to see a small amount, very small amount of Main Street retail, primarily restaurants, along that street. Over to the western side, we have the corporate campus mixed-use area, where another corporate campus user is envisioned there, and they may have some housing mixed in. And the Main Street area would also have some housing mixed in. And then the area up in the northwest corner is City of Brooklyn Park land, and an area around it that's really to be determined. It's still up in the air a little bit as to what would go there. A lot of different uses could work there. But this is a very exciting opportunity for your community that most cities don't have. So again, right at the station area, this is a detail of that transit garage. It'll be lined with retail, and then it faces out over this large boulevard, and we're just looking at the upper block, and there's still a development site above it on Oak Grove Parkway. And this is our final image. So this is an image, a pop-up image of what that would look like. So you can see the Grand Boulevard, is what we're calling it, where West Broadway would be split into north and south traffic. North would go up the right-hand side, and south would come down the left. And then the green space in the middle is really, it's not a place where you're going to play baseball or go out and hang out. It's not a hangout space. It's a place of movement, and it's really just kind of a gracious termination as you get to the end of the line and the edge of your city. And then again, hospitality uses on the, and Main Street uses on the right, and then the transit garage and other uses on the left.